This is the Thursday seminar series of World Bank's What's Cooking, Data-Driven and Digital Agriculture webinar series, which we've been hosting for last 6 to 7 months. I think during the whole COVID period, we have hosted more than 35 very innovative kind of webinars, which we invite in this series. We invite innovators, startup founders, thought leaders, technology company CEOs, and World Bank staff who are leading data and digital operations and are transforming agriculture and food systems using data-driven digital agriculture approaches. This series is available on a digital agriculture website, the World Bank's website, which you will find at the end of the announcement, and also on the Open Learning Campus website, where we are hosting a lot of people who join the Open Learning Campus to listen to these webinars. So you will find all the proceedings of the previous webinars, plus the recordings and presentations of this webinar also on the same link. So you will receive, it's a good series. Please subscribe to this. And if you want to invite someone else to join the webinar series, please write to the organizers and see if we can, include you in our mailing list. Today is a very interesting webinar, connecting the dots to foster the digital transformation, learning from SmartAgriHub experience in Europe and its implications for Africa. I think we all know that a lot of work which is happening on digitization and on data and all, I think is very kind of exciting for many sectors at the same time. However, in agriculture, we have generally seen there's a lot of fragmentation of knowledge, technology, information for different stakeholders. So all the farmers and the service providers and the businesses which are supporting the farmers sometimes do not get access to the information, data, and technology in a way that it spurs more innovation and leads to development of a startup industry. So AgTech is a very new area, and I think we have many innovative startups. We have done a number of studies to find out that jointly with IFC and us, but still AgriTech is about 10 to 15 years behind FinTech, where we see a huge amount of sharing of information, innovation happening on a regular basis. So today we are very lucky to have to listen to the European Union's Horizon 2020 project on SmartAgriHubs. And I think what is exciting about is that they are developing a pan-European network of digital innovation hubs. These are public-private partnerships for innovation, and they act as one-stop shop for farmers, advisory services, agri-food companies, startups to benefit from digital technology solutions. And this provides a very useful service to the new kinds of AgTech companies, especially SMEs, startups, and mid-caps, to get access to technology, testing, and others. I don't want to speak about that much. I think good scale. We have 140 of these hubs in Europe, connected to about 2,000 competence centers. And so we are now today looking at this experience, and then we will look at how this experience can be taken to Africa. We have very good and eminent people to describe that. You have all these CVs there. I'll say very quickly something about them. George Beers from Wageningen, who's the coordinator of the Horizon 2020, this pilot on Internet of Farm and Food, and also the digital innovation hubs for farmers, is going to make the first lead presentation. And this would be followed by Augustus Elisianis. He's the founder and CEO of Art21, one of the digital innovation hubs, which George will be talking about, and he will share his experience with SmartAgriHubs. He has been doing this in Lithuania and Baltic for quite some time now. And then we have Doris Marcat, who will say a few words from the European Commission side, as they are the ones who are supporting and funding this initiative from the European Union side. And Doris has been leading the work on the digitization of agriculture from the EU side for some time. And then we have a very rich group of discussants. We have James Oborowski, who is the country director in Uganda at TechnoServe, and he led the Kaju Labs cashew incubator for TechnoServe in Benin. And then from the World Bank side, we have Oleana Dobush, or from IFC, global upstream lead for agribusiness and forestry at IFC, Manufacturing, Agribusiness and Services Department, who is leading this work on creating the market and upstream work in IFC right now on agriculture, agribusiness, and AgTech. From World Bank, we have other two people. We have Jihai Kim, who is Senior Digital Agriculture Specialist in the Africa region and leads number of these operations in Africa on digital agriculture. And we have Vinay Vutukuru, who is coordinating our program in Kenya. And he is also leading a number of initiatives in Kenya, particularly the Million Farmer Platform there. And they both are supporting a number of startups and innovators and the government on developing the ecosystem there. Then we have Leslie Go, who is the Senior Technology Advisor with the bank. She is also supporting government of Indonesia to start a similar innovation hub in Indonesia. So we will also learn from what the implications for that are. And finally, our own Mary Agnes who is the organizer of this webinar, and she's developing the agenda on digital innovation from the global engagement team in the agriculture food GP, and she will moderate the final part of this session. So the format is that we have George going on for 15 minutes. I will pose some questions to George. Then Augustus goes for 8 minutes. Then all other discussants go for 5 minutes, and I'll urge the discussants to stay to the time limit of 5 minutes. And I'm going to be today a little bit brutal because we don't have a lot of time. We have to close this at 11:30 so that we can retain the interest there. I would also request audience to start asking the questions whenever you listen to the presentation, because we will harvest all your questions in a final 30-minute session to make sure that both the presenters and discussants get to respond to your questions at the end. So that's the format, but please participate. The chat is very important, and I would urge the presenters to also look at the chat while the chat is going on so that we are able to respond to that. So without further ado, I will now invite George to make his presentation. George, over to you.
Okay, thanks Paresh for giving me the floor. Is it on screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Great. Okay, thanks for Paresh and for Maria Agnes for inviting me to share the project SmartAgriHubs with you. It's a very exciting project, but maybe it's good to know before we start that SmartAgriHubs is not a project that was just started 3 years ago. It is a project that's in a line of previous projects. So we build up an ecosystem step by step in the different projects. And one of the previous projects is the EU H2020 project, where we did a lot of experience with large-scale piloting. And while we were doing these pilots with 33 huge use cases, we learned a lot on let's say the different aspects of digitization. But what was left is how to scale up and how to get from a, let's say, select community at EU level, how to reach out to the fields far away in all over Europe. And that's basically the objective that we took in the SmartAgriHubs as a central point. What we do in SmartAgriHubs is combining different types of knowledge for the digital transformation in agri-food sector. It's basically three types of knowledge. It's technical knowledge on digitization, of course. It's business model, because in the end, the technology has to be transferred in business. But very specific for agriculture is that you also have to acknowledge the importance of regional knowledge and sectoral knowledge. Poultry in Denmark is very different from poultry in Greece, for instance. So you have to acknowledge the importance of that. So that's where we build on SmartAgriHubs. Another thing I want to mention before we start telling more about the project is that we are operating in what is known the Valley of Death. So we have a lot of, let's say, projects in the academia and research institutes where prototypes are developed, very interesting. They are validated at the campus of the university or at test farms. But how to make a nice innovation and bring it to the part that there is business and there are revenues on the solution, and where private investors want to participate in this. Before getting into that stage that private investors want to be involved, there is a tricky part where we have to combine different types of resources, public as well as private sector. So funding is an important issue in the SmartAgriHubs project, and especially in combining the different types of funding. So, and that's not only on the funding, but also all kinds of, let's say, practical issues like standardization and interoperability are key aspects in the Valley of Death, as we call them. So it's basically we are operating in the TRLs from 5 to 8, basically. That's the way we do it is by giving a central function to the digital innovation hubs. And the digital innovation hubs is something that it's an entity that is located at a local level, just in the proximity of farmers. So, and it is trusted by farmers. So farmers with questions on digitization can go there in a trusted environment where they can get advice and support. It is a digital innovation hub, very specific. It is connected to the European network. So they have access to the latest knowledge, the expertise, and all the technology that is, let's say, state of the art. And that's a very important aspect, that the digital innovation hub at local level is connected to the European body of knowledge and experience. It's not only about supporting farmers, but it's also about promoting digital transformation by picking up very interesting examples from Europe and bringing it to your own local community as a good practice and an inspiration for digitization at the local level. As mentioned, it's also having ideas is one, but it also needs to be connected with funding. Last but not least is that a digital innovation hub is not a new type of organization. No. It's a role that is embedded in existing organizations. So it's, and where we can embed it, we are experimenting with that. We have digital innovation hubs embedded in the extension service, but also in chambers of commerce or in research centers. There's a variety of that, and probably it is different from country per country where it works best. A digital innovation hub it's an entity that has the trust of farmers, but it's providing services, and it's providing three types of services, as we acknowledge. It's of course the technology services, helping on what kind of technology would fit on the issues, the challenges in the region. It also supports in the let's say the business part, and we have services on the ecosystem, so organizing meetings where digitization is promoted and where people can learn from each other, and maybe some lobbying can be done. A digital innovation hub basically is not in particular one person or a group of persons, but it's a network. It's a local network where all kinds of parties that are involved in digitization are gathering and meeting each other. So that's also important. That's why the ecosystem services are important, to bring all the parties together. And as you can see, it's also linked to the European network by different, and maybe the next slide can, sorry. It's linked to the European, it's linked to other digital innovation hubs. It's linked to other digital innovation hubs all over Europe. It's linked to innovation experiments, which are basically where projects where digital innovation takes place. And it's linked to a set of competence centers, so organizations that are capable in bringing specific technology. For instance, we have competence centers on robotic or on high performance computing. So specific issues we have, let's say, competence centers defined, and the digital innovation hubs at local level has access to those competence centers all over Europe. So there's the paradigm, as mentioned in the title of this webinar, it's connecting the dots, and basically that's our business, connecting dots. So we are connecting competence centers, hubs, and innovation experiments, and we do it also by facilitating the hubs in, we call it the maturity model, which is basically a set of training modules where digital innovation hubs are facilitated to develop their services, the different types of services. So the hubs, they have access to all those, let's say, experience and state-of-the-art knowledge. They're also having access to, well, it's here mentioned as reusable components. So, you know, in a lot of digital application, you need a weather station, but don't reinvent how to connect a weather station to an Internet of Things application. It's already done thousands of times, and you can learn from it in our collection of reusable components. It's a catalog that presents all kinds of technical solutions. It's also one of the functions that we are developing. It's not in place yet, but we are working on it to have a set of test and demonstration farms, also make it accessible for the hubs to demonstrate the new technology. And all those things are to facilitate the DIH services. Some figures on the project. We are a 4-year project. We are now 3 years on the road. To give you an idea on the size, we are currently working with 250 hubs. We are targeting at 400. We have open calls to get the system activated, as I call it. We have a set of innovation experiments, not only our own, but we also have access to innovation experiments from the previous projects that I was mentioning. And we have a lot. It's a big partnership because we have access to all the member states in this project. And to give you an idea, this is funded by the Commission with a substantial budget of 20 million euro on subsidy. And one of the challenges we have in the project is to find additional funding to have a leverage on this European money. Connecting the dots, it's our business. So maybe good to know that SmartAgriHubs builds on a set of projects where we have the paradigm of open innovation. So IPR only when necessary, but sharing knowledge, sharing experience is in the veins of the people working in SmartAgriHubs. And maybe to make a step to SmartAgriHubs for Africa, why are we interested in that? It's connecting digital innovations, digital innovation hubs in Africa to the European network. So they can also have access to the experiences, the knowledge and the tools that we have available for the European digital innovation hubs. We make them also available. We can make them also available for African digital innovation hubs. Sharing knowledge is very important. We expect also that African digital innovation hubs share their experience with the European, because we are very much aware that we can also learn a lot from other digital innovation hubs. It's maybe good to know that the SmartAgriHubs project is not about innovation as such. It's more about organizing the digital innovation. And I can say that the projects, at least the concept as we use them, have a lot of interest, not only from Africa, but we also have lively contacts with countries like India, with Canada, with Latin America, Australia. All those countries are interested in how we organize this, let's say, scaling up this network of networks, as you can say. So that's a stepping stone, maybe some first steps that can easily be made by linking initiatives from Africa to the European ones. It's everybody can register in our innovation portal. Our innovation portal is the portal where we bring all things together: innovation experiments, competence centers, and all the tools that we are using in the digital innovation hubs. So everybody can register, and the idea is that if there are similar portals in Africa, we can link the portals. We can link the portals also to other continents. So in the end, we will share the knowledge, and this is our response to the fragmentation issue, because we see a lot of similar projects all over the world. Hundreds of projects are doing the same on irrigation. And it would be good, it would be better if we stand up, if we take the examples that are already existing and build upon them, instead of reinventing the wheel. And most important for that is that the dots are connected. It's not only the portal that we have. We are also, well, if COVID allows us, we will organize big events where we bring the innovators together, also for a face-to-face meeting. And that's where I want to stop my presentation and give the floor to you, Paresh.
Thanks a lot, George. You've you've introduced the topic quite well, and I think you've sort of whetted people's appetite of how this model is working. So, and thanks, Jacques and Sabine, for answering questions in the chat while the discussion is going on. So you have a bigger team, and I want to acknowledge your team, which is already responding to questions. And please keep on asking the questions, because there's an interesting discussion going on in the chat, and a lot of clarifications, questions are being answered by George and his team. George, I want to just ask you one question before I go to Augustus. So what would you see as a major challenge to create the same dense and intense ecosystem which you have developed in Europe? Because you said it's taken you time. So we see some incubators already in Africa, and we see some research consortiums which have similar kind of traits. So how would you go about it? Would you collaborate with an African institution of the same kind as Wageningen to get this started, or you will work in a more, kind of, I would not call it diffused, but a multiple kind of network kind of a model? How would you approach using this in Africa, and what do you would see as the initial success? Because I also want you to talk about what have been your successes in the SmartAgriHub. Which technologies you think have got the most traction in your SmartAgriHub, and what technologies we should focus on? So should we focus on technology, or should we focus on innovation? Please, if you can briefly answer this question. I know it's $1 million question, but please, if you can respond next 3 minutes. Yeah.
We found out that technology basically is not the issue. There are so many, let's say, prototypes all over the world on everything that you can think of. How to make it work in reality on the farm level? How to make it work not only on 5 experimental farms, but how to scale up to real farm, to real farming. That's the challenge that we are facing. And then you end up with not so much technology question. You end up with integration issues. It has to integrate in the specific farming situation. That's why the local expertise is very important. What kind of farm, what kind of equipment is there, and is the equipment ready to accept, to include the new technology in that? And then, of course, we are facing a lot of issues in let's say the business part. There are nice ideas, but for instance, we have a lot of precision farming tools that help to reduce on chemicals. And then we ask farmers to invest in that, but there's no return on investment in that, except for environmental, which they are not paid for. So that's also a challenge that we need to face. The last challenge that we take is to get over the feeling that you are the genius that has invented it all. And that's the best way to do that, is to confront and bring people together. Put them in a room if they are working on the same challenges, put them together, and then they change their mode, that they are learning from each other, they are cooperating. We brought together a couple of people that are working on potatoes, and now we have a digital innovation hub on potatoes, for instance, because they acknowledge the added value of meeting each other, sharing ideas, sharing experiences.
Thank you very much, George. And I'm sure there are other questions which will come later on and which will be in the discussion, which Mary Agnes will moderate. So I would like now to go to Augustus, who is the founder of AgT21, who's been doing very innovative work on precision agriculture, grain storage in Baltics. And Augustus is one of the digital innovation hubs. And please, floor is yours, Augustus, for the next 8 minutes. Please go ahead.
Thank you so much. Just to double check, is my PowerPoint visible and everything is fine?
Very good, very good. It's very.
Thank you, thank you. So, well, it's a pleasure to be here. Really delighted, and it's a big honor, as always, to share the stage with Mr. George Beards. So thank you for that. I'm always saying that George is kind of a godfather to our Digital Innovation Hub by always giving a hand, advice, knowledge, and expertise when it's needed. So once again, thanks so much. I just got back from Africa, by the way, spent there almost 3 months by trying to move part of our operations to that region. So even now, my still heart is there. The body, unfortunately, is back to the cold Europe. So to kick start, I would like to firstly define what is Digital Innovation Hub, so we would be on the same vocabulary. And the example, what I like is, I always say that, well, it's kind of similar to the pharmacy, because when we go to the pharmacy, we know the symptoms and the problems what we have, whether it's a fever, whether it's a headache, or we did a cut to ourselves. So we come there, tell the problem, and the pharmacist, the person with the expertise, with the proper education and the knowledge, he makes the plan how to treat ourselves to recover faster. So Digital Innovation Hub, it's the same story, only in business-wise, academia-wise, corporation, startup-wise. So Digital Innovation Hub helps and gives the prescription how to make more efficient, more valuable, businesses, as well as cooperation in between different ecosystem players. So this is my opinion. Now, if to go back to Lithuania, the country itself, I always pitch, and I think I already succeeded. And the story is that Lithuania, it's super green and super high-tech country. We are the first country in Europe per capita by producing the agricultural products, as well as we are among top 5 countries in European Union per capita by having the biggest specialist labor power in the information technology and life science industries. So by combining those two, agri and high tech, it's a perfect place, the country itself, it's a perfect place to pilot and to test different technologies and innovations country-wise. And then from the small country, we are capable to export the know-how and the value to the bigger markets, to the bigger regions, by bringing back the added value, which is in a way money and expertise and network. So from the country to AgriFood Lithuania, Digital Innovation Hub itself, formally, well, the company, the organization was started in 2012, so it's not a young one. and we operated more like a cluster. But when George, 2019, visited us here, he said, listen, what you do, it's a digital innovation hub. So focus more on that. And I said, okay, we go. So within those couple of years, what we've done, I'm proud that we are the member of the SmartAgriHub family. This is very important to us, and it helps to foster for ourselves in the international arena and the network. As well as this year, we've become the hub of EAT food. So we are the contact point and the center for entire EAT food in Lithuania. We won, and I'm really proud that we won the national competition to become the European Digital Innovation Hub. So waiting for the call in the Commission to launch. And we are one of the 4 DIHs which were financed by the Ministry of Economy to build up more infrastructure, more scientific facilities, to hire more people, to make it, more wide what we do already. And GRS, they named us among top 2 best performing sectorial digital innovation hubs in Europe, which is really amazing. Now, to get there, it's not that easy, and we have more than 50 people. We actually sell the services, digitalization consultations, and different kind of other services for the companies, corporates, tech developers, and academia. We do a lot of research. We have our private laboratories, life science, data science, and other ones. But the most important thing here, I think, is that we create the ecosystem. We do more than 120 events per year, which is each third day per an event, by gathering really more than 20,000 people. And the most important thing is that the big network of the farmers are involved. So Agri-Food Lithuania is kind of hands-on on the market from one side, but in a deep cooperation with the academia, with the tech providers, and with the big corporates. So we are always there and trying to adopt the technologies and to help the ecosystem itself to make it faster. Therefore, we work a lot with the policymakers, governmental authorities to make the models how to incentivize to adopt those technologies, because we are always talking about the greening, more sustainable, but environmental sustainability, it has to be in a balance with the financial sustainability for the farmers and for the corporates as well. So this is where we are. And my personal opinion, disclaimer, really personal opinion, but I believe more that the DIH, Digital Innovation Hub, it has to be organization, not a project. Therefore, what we do here in Agri-Food Lithuania, it's a non-profit organization, but it has the strategy, the values, it lives, it breathes only about how to digitalize. It's not just a project beside other projects in an entity. It has to have the long-term strategy, activities, and full-time working personnel who has the desire and, of course, the focus to make an impact, to change the existing business models and to bring something good. And the way how we are shaping the model is that, well, we are bringing a lot of value for the market for different kind of stakeholders. Once we share the gains. What I mean when we share the gains, we send the invoice. Very easy. So what I want to say here is that I don't believe in successful digitalizing the region or the area without proper financial model how the entity, the organization has to work. If it is there, then most probably there is a little bit closer to a success than it's without that. Now, if you're talking about the bridge in between the Europe, the experience in Europe and Africa, I would say it's always easy and cheap and affordable and fast to twin the current technologies by adopting them to different use cases. Just a short example, because I have limited period of time, is that, for example, we are creating a technology back here in Europe where by using the drones and different type of cameras, we are flying above the forests and scanning them to identify where the boars are, the wild boars. Why? Because we have a lot of issues with African swine fever, and we need to understand to count them and to understand how they move. So the government could make some, actions. Now, when I was in Africa, we started to build one nice use case with a gentleman who owns the national parks. Well, not national parks, but the private parks. And the idea there is that they have the need to track the rhinos as well as the poachers who are dealing with illegal activities. So technologically wise, it's the same technology, so animal detection. But by moving from one region to another, we are defining different use cases. So, I mean, take what it is on the table, as George said, that there are so many things developed already, refine, retune to adopt to other regions, as we are talking today about Africa. And well, to wrap it up, how to do it fast and sustainable to implement the best practices of digitalizing the industries in Africa, I would say, and I'm of course repeating myself, but this is the conclusion part. So healthy financial model of digital innovation hub, it has to be there. It will not come up by not having the long-lasting strategy. This is why I said that it has to be driven as the organization, not a project, for a couple of years. So if there is a strategy, what to do within a time frame of 10 to 15 years, if there is perfect, and healthy financing system and understanding how it can be self-sustainable as organization, then the question is how to take the first actions. And I would say that taking over, or well, at these times, you cannot just take it over, but buying over the best practices from the international partners, international arena, is the fastest way. So just to take it, to adopt, refine, retune, and I think this is the kickoff from where the region, the ecosystem will start to flourish itself and to foster further. So these are my short remarks. I'm really looking forward to whether answer your question or just to join the discussion later on. Thank you so much. I hope I'm in time.
Thanks a lot, Augustus. Very stimulating presentation. You are a real brand ambassador for Lithuania as well. I hope our Europe teams will talk to you after this, because I think you are trying to show how you are creating a new sector in a country which is not that known for agriculture, but you've created an AgTech ecosystem in Lithuania, and it seems to be vibrant. And I think we are very glad that you are looking at Africa as the next, place to go. I think this is required. I think AgTech requires multinational investments, because it's not going to be that it's going to, and that's something which our colleagues at IFC are also trying to do, how to take the global experiences or regional experiences to countries. And we will listen to Uliana later on. To complete the European story, I would now invite, so we have started the discussion part of our segment. So we will start now with Doris Marquardt from European Commission. And Doris, you have 5 minutes now to share your perspective and also give us some advice to the World Bank on how we should be investing in this going forward.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me, and good morning, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Doris Marquardt. I'm with background in agriculture policies and in agriculture and rural development and programming policy instruments at the European, national and regional level. And I also have experience with capacity building at the ground, working with stakeholders across different regions in Europe. So, and within the European Commission and the Agriculture Directorate General, I'm coordinating the work on digitalization in agriculture and rural development. So that means I'm working in the intersection of policy fields. And this includes both cross-sectoral legislation as well as the different policy programs. So without going into detail on the European Union landscape of policy instrument, but this includes, for instance, beyond the Common Agriculture Policy, the forthcoming Digital Europe program, and the Research and Innovation Framework program, Horizon 2020, and forthcoming Horizon Europe. So why I'm telling that? So sitting on the crossroads is decisive for fostering a comprehensive approach towards the digital transformation of the agriculture sector, for which capacity building is an asset. And as you know, here capacity building goes beyond the provision of broadband, innovation, digital solutions, and investment support, but it also concerns skills, advice, as well as data and data flows. So, and within that work, I also have the pleasure to supervise the implementation of SmartAgriHubs, the project, together with my colleague Joël Baquet from DG Connect. And the last brings us also to the one important element here, the cross-domain collaboration in the Commission, which is an important aspect when thinking about how to roll out support to digitalization in agriculture. So when looking at the concept of SmartAgriHubs, which follows actually the concept of digital innovation hub, this is also followed in other sectors. The concept has been super well introduced by George, and I will not repeat it. What's important here from the funders' perspective or the European Commission perspective is that we have actually two target groups. So the main target groups are the AgTech community or the innovators, and on the other side, the farmers, the end users. And for the farmers, it's about bringing innovation to the market, making it ready to be deployed directly. And for the farmers, on the other hand, it's the handy access to innovation technologies received as a package with business models, legal and technical advice, and so forth and so forth. So we have two target groups and not one only. And insofar, this approach to digital innovation hubs varies from the classic support to research and innovation, as it focuses on the upscaling and deployment of innovation. And it also varies from the classic farm or end user support, where we have investment support supplemented by advice. So the digital innovation hubs have on both sides a strong capacity building and social networking dimension. So in the establishment of regional networks around hubs is not only important to embed innovation into the socioeconomic and including the legal and environmental context, but also to provide advice from different disciplines as a one-stop shop and establish trust in new technologies. So that is one aspect which I would like to add, which is quite important, particularly in the agriculture sector. And then the regional internal networking is supplemented by networking and exchange of experience among hubs across Europe, across regions, as it was introduced by George. And important here for making networking effective, it has to be managed and it has to be coordinated and has to be targeted. And I think in both contributions, one aspect became already evident. When both speakers introduce themselves, they know each other, they have a personal contact, and it's about coordination through human beings with a personal notion. So that is quite important for social networking. It's not digitalized networking only. So when I was thinking about and how far this concept is transferable to African context or to other continents in the world, I would reflect on two important aspects. The one aspect is whether we have in a region the capacities to establish such a hub interdisciplinary, and it was mentioned already, it's not about a project, but it's about organization, and ideally it's long lasting. It's not about 2 or 3 years because social networks need time to mature. And the second aspect is about the interregional networking. We have internet regional networking potentially in Africa, but for making networking interesting and relevant, there has to be the common interest and there has to be the network management, which is essential. And if you think beyond European or beyond continents, networking has to be interested for all the networkers because otherwise they will not contribute. So is that manageable to create a networking or a network which is relevant for all the actors potentially be involved? So that would I regard personally as a key challenge next for sure, the network management. And that is why you see it, networking is supported through and funded through the European Commission in several domains. Thank you.
Doris, giving your perspective, and I think you really talk about investing in networks as a global public good, and I think that's very important because that spurs up a lot of private investments eventually and we have a lot to learn from this experience there. Now, I'm going to announce the order, I think, in which we will. So you are ready with your thing. I'm changing order a little bit, asking Uliana to go first and talk about IFC and what is her perspective on what she has heard, plus what IFC is doing upstream in this field. Then I'll go to James and he'll talk about Uganda, TechnoServe. Then I go to GI, who then talks about, then I go to Vinay, and then I'll go to Leslie at the end. And all of you are going to get 5 minutes, but Mary Agnes is going to use a ring, use a bell, which is your warning of 4.5 minutes. And if you don't stop, then I'll really cut you because we are under tremendous time pressure. I want to get everyone in. I want to get the audience in. Please keep on asking the questions, and the SmartAgriHub team is answering your questions as they go. so that we are able to get responses to your questions. But we would like a good discussion at the end on taking some of the issues which you have raised, plus issues which you will raise as discussants. So over to you, Uliana, now.
Thank you very much. Well noted on time. As mentioned before, I am leading IFC agribusiness work in upstream. So what we call upstream is a new type of operations IFC, where we engage with private and public sectors to create conditions for private investments that otherwise would have not occurred. So as a financial institutions, we typically invest in projects or engage on advisory sides with clients when there is a bankable investment opportunity. But what we increasingly see in emerging markets, there is a shortage of commercially viable projects, especially in agribusiness in IDA countries. So this is how upstream was created to deliver on IFC 2030 growth agenda. So in agribusiness, we see technology innovation as key components of our engagements. As George nicely put it on the graph, so there is a need and there is this missing link between public and private funding. So this is again where we see upstream coming in at this valley of death and creating this bridge. As upstream, we now are willing to take a little bit more risk than IFC traditional operations take, and engage in or either create projects or engage with projects early on to support this demonstration and piloting activities to prepare projects to commercial investment, including by IMC and also utilizing other sources of private capital. So again, that gives us a little bit more patience that typically financial institutions have, and we engage with projects or in activities that lead to private sector investments within 2 to 5 years. So in particularly in AgTech, we do see our role in supporting adaptation activities, so adopting technology to the needs of smallholder farmers in emerging markets. We do engage in projects where the model is, where the concept is already proven to be viable, exactly in this stage where it is viable, but it does require demonstration, in some cases adaptation and support, including co-funding, to bring it to commercial stage and to the expansion stage where private capital would step in, including from IFC. So IFC, in that sense, IFC is well positioned to support tech at various stages. So starting from close coordination with the World Bank in creating ecosystem, then upstream comes in to support demonstration, adaptation, and creating efficient delivery models. And then IFC has a venture capital team that invest in tech startups. Through our agribusiness investments, we also support non-tech companies in adoption of tech in their operations or in their supply chains. And we also closely work with our advisory services. In agribusiness, we do have AgTech related projects in most of the regions. In particularly in Africa, we have Ethiopia, we have East Africa AgTech project that is currently piloting 6 models in Ethiopia and has 6 more pilots in a pipeline. So the project will be gradually scaled across Africa. And again, if we see this replicable, we will go broader, in other regions of Africa. IFC has the largest portfolio of NDB agribusiness clients in emerging markets. So in a sense, it is already a platform to deploy technology. And again, at upstream, we step in with providing early stage funding, and we work closely with our advisory services to support adoption and capacity building for both tech companies to deliver their technology to emerging markets and for non-tech companies to support adoption. So some observations, and I fully agree with George, is that technology is not an issue. right? So what we see is that adoption, especially by smallholder farmers, remains like a key unknown. So we are looking at ways of how we at Upstream can support effective delivery models to deliver technology to last mile. And again, would be useful to hear sorts of other discussions on this topic. And another thing, again, what types of technologies, what we observe on the ground, there is more popularity and more scale up in supply chain efficiency tech versus precision ag that is more complex for smallholder farmers to adopt. So how do we support delivery of those technologies? And another area that we are looking at is adoption of technology, right? So technology needs to be adopted to the needs of smallholder farmers, noted on the bell, and efficiently delivered to last mile. And there are, there is some work we are doing in this space. Back to you, Parmesh. Hope I did well on time.
Absolutely, Ileana, you're dot on time, and you covered a range of issues. IFC is a lot of huge agenda, and you explained to people how IFC is positioning itself to work on the upstream and working in that. You also brought a very good point about the smallholder technology adoption, because a lot of tech innovation has, there is a skepticism that it does not touch the smallholder farmer. And so I think I would like these questions to be taken up later on. Someone should look at how these things will really work for smallholders. So James, I know that TechnoServe works with smallholders, and you also are obsessed with smallholders and technology both. So James, over to you. You have the floor now.
Thank you very much, Parmesh. So yeah, a little bit about, my name is James Obrowski. I'm working with TechnoServe. To give you a little background of who that is, we're a US NGO. We're working for 50 years, and we're currently covering about 29 countries in Central and Latin America and Africa. We have always worked in agriculture and entrepreneurship and developing agricultural supply chains from production through processing and export with a market focus. And one of the things I think where we do our best work is when we help design and implement industry strategic plans, usually at a regional or national level, and we work with the actors to design a vision over a 5 or 10 year period and then help them implement that. One of the sectors that we've been working in for about 20 years now is cashew, which I provide technical support to. So in Africa, cashew is about a $6 billion industry with roughly 3 million farmers across the continent between West and Southern Africa. And to get in a little bit to where the Cashew Lab, as you mentioned earlier, comes in, a couple of years ago when we started the Cashew Lab initiative, we were working with around 150,000 farmers across a couple of different countries. But there's very little information available on farmers and production. We knew the farmers we were working with, but we didn't have a clean picture of the production at a national level or regional level. And we were looking, how can we scale our reach and scale our impact with the same resources? So how do we close the gap between 150,000 and 3 million? And so we're looking at emerging technologies we thought might be relevant, and we decided to start the Cashew Labs project and have been able to raise some funding. There was a lot of bootstrapping in the beginning, and early successes brought more funding to adapt emerging technologies to smallholder tree crops, such as cashew, but we had an eye, we have a very large coffee practice as well, so we're hoping to be able to expand these to coffee, cocoa, and other crops that we work on. And our basic approach was to build, measure, learn, lean development process, testing things out, see what works, improve on them, expand them. A couple of the illustrative technologies that we were looking at that we thought were relevant, satellite and drone analysis of plantations, agronomy information available to extension workers and farmers through chatbots, and a product realization lab as we also work on cashew processing. And we're looking at ways to both create training centers, design centers, and improve the ability to make and repair cashew processing equipment where cashew is produced in West Africa in particular. A couple of the challenges we ran into, so we decided to pilot this project in Benin, where we had our largest program, and also which was sort of the least digitally connected geography that we were working in. So that meant some challenges. There's very low digital readiness. There were very few and very nascent actors in digital innovation in general. And they were acting in silos, very much closed source thinking. And then as we started to look at some of the technologies that were available globally in contacting providers, we quickly discovered that these technologies were often not designed for smaller clients like ourselves. Even their billing processes and engagement contracting processes were meant for very large, multi-billion-dollar companies with large technical teams to be able to actually use these tools. The back end, for example, of Google's chatbot tools are extremely complicated. Also language, so working in Benin is Francophone. Our other big programs include Mozambique, Lusophone, speaking Portuguese. Most of the tools that we found, especially in language processing, they're only built for English. A lot of the AI is built only on English. And so we were limited in the choices we had and very much became a guinea pig for some of the providers to test out their tools in another language. And then finally, a lot of the tools, especially in remote sensing, I know someone mentioned drone tech earlier, we quickly discovered that almost all of the tools are designed for row crops or large uniform plantations, where you have thousands of hectares of plants that are of the same variety, planted consistently, equally spaced, planted at the same time. We were very surprised ourselves at the lack of adapted solutions to smallholder farmer context, given how much this is talked about in many forums. And then lastly, lack of data, both inexistence of data to train, and also data is not comparable. Bell is noted. So to kind of come at these challenges and some of the solutions we came along, learning from African pioneers around the makerspace. We were talking to Gearbox, for example, as a pioneer, and we were able to learn from their mistakes and successes. Building communities of practice and expert advisor panels from satellite providers to companies like Autodesk and Google, advising us and helping us along the way. Ourselves acting as a hub and connector to facilitate cross-learning between the few actors that were there. Taking an open source design so we can get more feedback and learn from others and help others learn from us. Lots of rapid piloting, and of course, building large databases, which we invested quite a bit of our resources, much more than initially planned, in just building databases so that these tools could actually be developed. Quick thoughts on the hubs, and then I'll hand it over. There's a huge amount of diversity on the continent. So I do think that networking could help reduce some of this divergence. However, regulatory environments remain a challenge and are very different across the continent. The divergence is also, if you see, most solutions are coming out of Kenya and or South Africa, and there are cultural reasons for that also. We can learn from fintech and their mistakes with mobile money. They quickly realized that mobile money did not take off quite so easily in non-Kenyan environments. So you need to have local solutions, and this network really needs to come from local actors and local hubs building it up. And I think the European experience is going to be good for offering platforms and tools, sharing experiences, and just a knowledge exchange. But I'm skeptical of solutions, actual technologies coming from there. I think expertise might come to help develop, but the ideas are going to have to come from different localities across the continent. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks, James. I think you're differentiating between ideas, expertise, technologies. So I think a lot of adaptation required, and I think so I think GI Kim, with our senior digital agriculture specialist, follows, and I think you guys should talk to each other now after the meeting, because GI leads all our work in Uganda. There should be some collaboration between TechnoServe and the World Bank going forward, because you are working on similar issues. So GI, so for all the discussions now in the remaining period, you please spend a couple of minutes on talking about what you are doing, and then spend rest on reacting to today's presentation on how applicable it is to your context. So I would say that if you can divide your time equally between the two, and please follow the 5-minute limit. We are really stretching ourselves a little bit. We are doing well so far, but I don't want to spoil our track record. Please, Gia, over to you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Parmesh, and thank you for our presenters. So in the way of introducing myself, again, I'm Ji-Hye Kim. So I lead operations in Africa, especially in Uganda and Cameroon. But I'm based in DC, and I have strong itches to go back to Africa, as one of our presenters said. So, well, in World Bank operations, we have this problem of, you know, providing access to technology for smallholder farmers, but also making it, you know, affordable. But then also matching the technology providers to farmers in a sustainable and in a sustainable and manageable ways. And what we realized was that there were a surge and emergence of agri-tech startups in Africa, locally grown. And we really were curious how we could leverage their presence in Africa, and at the same time, you know, address these challenges of technology adoption from farmers' perspective and scale issues from the local agri-tech entrepreneurs' perspective and their survival in the business, right? And so we started to look into the ecosystem of the agri-tech entrepreneurs and startups in Africa, how some of them succeed to scale up, some of them not so much, and what makes them you know, more profitable as opposed to others, and what is the more successful business models, you know, based on what types of challenges and solutions that they provide to. And so that's actually that was done 2 years ago in a study in Africa. And then the learnings from that study is actually being mainstreamed and operationalized in some of the countries that I work in, as well as in Guinea. So Kenya, Uganda, and some pilots of that will be implemented in Cameroon. So what am I saying is, you know, saying operationalizing it is the bank brings investment, right, in the country, and then with that we have a lot of interventions that provide subsidies to smallholder farmers according to their needs, and then this is a big business opportunities, and then sort of a guaranteed market for a lot of local agri-tech entrepreneurs if they can tap into this. So we open challenges for them to come and pitch their solutions, which will have a lot of impact on addressing the challenges of the smallholder farmers that we are targeting. So that's being modeled and then being implemented in Africa, and we want to scale this up and replicate in other countries. Now, how does this actually sort of gel with what you mentioned today, the two presenters on SmartAgriHub and the DIH? Is I think, so I sort of think SmartAgriHub as like an apex organization with the DIHs. And I think as the presenter from TechnoServe said, we cannot really ignore in Africa that there is a lot of diversity and diversion exists. And then ignoring that would be a very, you know, costly mistake. However, you know, exchanging this knowledge, how it happened in Europe, in a sense that how the platform actually is being operated sustainably, because I think it is. I mean, it came from IOF 2020, now evolved into the SmartAgriHub. And I'm really curious to know what is next SmartAgriHub, because it's on 3rd year of the 4-year project. But all this knowledge of having done trial and errors would have enormous lessons for some of the similar apparatus and then apex organizations in Africa, and they exist. They may not exist in a very succinct and a very clear form like SmartAgriHub, but you know, they exist in WhatsApp groups, they exist in very informal volunteer groups, and a lot of you know, platforms that are more like a very regular group meetings. So sharing experience in that regard would actually bring more, and then we have to, you know, bring this with a bottom-up approach more than rather than, you know, top-down. So yeah, so I guess we have to use, as you know, again, the divergence in Africa as a leverage, not as a challenge. and then see how we can, exchange that knowledge from a point of view of, having those existing on the ground models and then bring them up to the speed. And as we scaled up the agri-tech startups, how to bring those platforms in that level. And Kenya's 1 million farmer platform and what we are doing in Uganda can actually provide a good sort of a starting pad for that kind of initiatives, I think. So I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Leslie. I'm surprised, as GI, thanks a lot. I think I'm surprised that you did get a bell. So you did extremely well, I think. And I think sharing things with the perspective of Africa, we have worked on this issue for a long time now. And how will we blend this with the European experience is a good thing to go. And that's a good segue to Vinay, who is leading our work in Kenya right now and is involved in working on similar ecosystems and platforms in Kenya. Over to you, Vinay.
Thanks, Parmesh. And I also target to avoid the bell. So that's how I'm planning to do. So I think, as Parmesh has suggested, let me just take about 2 minutes to describe what we're doing, and then I'll reflect upon the very useful presentation about the smart hubs. In terms of what we're doing, so in April 2019, Parmesh as the global lead and Jay were very much involved. We launched the 1 million farmer platform. It's really a public-private partnership platform, and what we're trying to do here in Kenya is really leverage the analog investments that are taking place through the bank projects, which is a significant kind of portfolio of about $500 million, to leverage these analog investment and bring in the private sector active startup ecosystem, and bring the digital technologies through that side. Just to describe how is this public-private partnership framework working. So through the bank projects, what we are helping the government of Kenya, the Ministry of Agriculture, to build up is really a solid farmer database, which is geotagged. Also to really provide agro-weather and market data to this nearly million farmers whose database has been created. And in addition, the public sector through the government, through these bank projects, is creating a last mile touch point in terms of a human interface, a community-based extension worker. So these are the three main public investments. And what so the 1 million farmer platform is asking the private sector startups to do is can you really leverage this public sector investment and come and deliver transactional services which enhance productivity and profitability of farmers, either in terms of inputs or in terms of credit and insurance or in terms of market linkages. So we have about, as we speak, nearly 24 active startups who are part of the platform, and we are actively bridging this interface between these startups and the public sector. So that's in short what we're doing. I think as I reflect upon what I've heard today, I really want to use the what and the how who kind of framework. I think in terms of the what, I don't know whether Augustus remembers, but there's a slide which he puts in just three things: healthy financing model, long-lasting strategy, so perseverance, and having a self-sustaining model. I think this really, for me, kind of encapsulates what are the three most important elements of having this kind of a platform. Let me explain through the how part. So one of the things, if you look at in this framework that I've explained, the platform per se is owned by a joint initiative, the World Bank and the public sector. But I think for it to be sustainable and long-lasting, we really need to think about a quasi-government entity which really manages this kind of a platform, which is much more, I would say, nimble, and which can reach out to this private sector ecosystem in a much better way. That's number one. Number two, I think while we are doing a lot on the farmer side, on the public sector side, clearly, I think there needs to be much more to be done on the innovator side in terms of helping them access, financing, incubation and acceleration support so that they are able to scale up much better. So that's another thing which really stands out for me in this presentation on smart hubs. I think that's my main reflection, that for Africa, and I completely agree with James, maybe Africa cannot borrow the technologies per se, but definitely the processes and the learnings as to how this has been done. I think that's something which has tremendous learnings for Africa as scale up. And I think it's even more important in case of Africa because the public sector capacity is much lesser. So therefore, there is a need to kind of come up with institutional mechanisms where there is this quasi-public sector entity which can play this role of an integrator between the innovators, the public sector, and the farmers. So that's one big takeaway. I'll stop here, Pamesh.
Thanks a lot, Vinay, for escaping the bell. So I think you also brought a lot of interesting points in terms of how existing platforms which we have supported could be really linked with this hub concept. And so one thing you didn't talk, and which I think will be the focus of the next webinar next Thursday, which I would like to advertise a little bit, because it will be on the big data platform investments, scaling up data-driven digital agriculture from the Kenya experience. We will get one of the innovation hubs in Kenya, which is the KALRO, which is the Kenya Agriculture Livestock Research Organization, which really is a hub for a lot of innovations there. And also talking with the ministry in Kenya, which has set up an agriculture transformation office. And then we will discuss how we can develop a similar kind of a data-driven platform in Kenya. So watch for this space next week, Thursday, the next one in this series. I will now go to Leslie Go, who is a senior technology advisor, and she was previously the chief technology officer of the World Bank. And she is working particularly right now in Indonesia to foster the innovation ecosystem and works with AgTech startups, private companies, and even Microsoft, a large partnership announced with the government. So Leslie, over to you. And again, please escape the bell.
Thank you, Pamesh. I really appreciate the chance to provide a few comments on what we're doing in Indonesia. But first, let me thank George and Augustus for the great sharing of your information on Smart Agri-Hubs and the challenges that are locally experienced on the ground for the smallholder farmers. I reflected on what you shared about the Digital Innovation Hub to bring together the ecosystem, technology, and business players. The partnership with digital farms create that linkage between technology and also academic research. I wonder if big techs could have a role in this configuration to address technology integration and to connect the dots using the theme of this session today with the enterprise networks in the agriculture ecosystem. It would also be important to consider the possibility of transferring some of these innovation at scale across Pan-Africa region and also in East Asia Pacific. So this is where I could share some highlights of what we're doing in Indonesia, the case study that we're working on, and also understanding how digital agriculture and contextualizing the areas that solutions in agriculture technology can help with some of the experience and the challenges in this sector. A quick background on Indonesia is that the goal of achieving these visions by 2050, where Indonesia's population will exceed 320 million people, of which 234 million will be in urban dwellers. And Indonesian consumers are shifting away from rice to a more diverse range of food products. However, the Indonesia agriculture production is heavily skewed to a few commodities. And the smallholder farmers still face constraints in access to finance, technology, adoption, and market access. 93% of the farmers in Indonesia are smallholder farmers, 75% are operating in less than 1 acre, and most of them are not part of a formal farmer group such as cooperatives. So how do we envision what it could be where digital components could try to address this challenge? So Indonesia is making progress on the digital transformation of agriculture sector through several initiatives, yet there's still some of the areas that are still at the beginning, such as partnership between public and private sector. Parmesh mentioned about the Microsoft partnership with Ministry of Agriculture that was announced recently in February 2021. And we're studying the local agriculture ecosystem and seeing how we can tap upon the youth to co-create solutions that could scale out at a greater level to address the entire value chain. But to develop all that digital agriculture ecosystem, we found that there are 3 critical factors needed: data, innovation, and partnership between the key stakeholders, public and private sectors. The agriculture digital transformation will leverage institutional innovation, such as the ones that my colleagues mentioned in Kenya, to foster that cross-pollination of knowledge and productive partnership, catalyzing data sharing, experimentation, and testing of disruptive technologies, but also addressing scale-up challenges that was mentioned by previous esteemed colleagues who talk about national level engagement for an efficient, equitable, and environmentally sustainable food systems. Currently, we have a project in the making to address these challenges with the Ministry of Agriculture. But to also catalyze the innovation in the ecosystem, we are envisioning a way to bring about that youth into the solutioning of the challenge. So we are going to hopefully tap upon the data science community in Indonesia, which is about 12,000 strong. And we envision that this could be a community of young co-creator to help us catalyze this innovation ecosystem. So more to come in the months ahead as we plan out these strategic partnership and also taking the idea and making that relevant on the ground, working with the agri-tech innovators and also the Ministry of Agriculture to bring these solutions together. I hope I summarize succinctly what we're doing, and we will definitely share that along the way as we put the plan together. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share the highlights of what we're doing in Indonesia, and hope to learn from all of you here. Thank you. Over to you, Parmesh. I think you're on mute.
Still muted again.
Sorry. So I think there are a lot of interesting questions coming in. I think flying a very rich and very pertinent question. So I would now hand over to Mary Agnes to facilitate a discussion between the panelists and also incorporating some of the audience questions. And so we are running a little bit behind time, but I'll still ask you to, we will go 10 minutes ahead more than the usual. So we'll go for 20 minutes. Over to you, Mary Agnes. You can pose one question to each of the panelists as a part of this. I'll suggest.
Yes, I was planning on having one question a bit broader since there's been a lot happening in the chat and we didn't have that much time. But I first wanted to thank George and Augustus for their really fascinating presentation of the SmartAgriHub and the discussion for very relevant example and comments. And just to recenter a bit of why we're here and why we brought you here. You know, at the World Bank and the team at the World Bank, the Agriculture and Food Global Engagement Unit, we're looking into what could be the role of the World Bank in supplying global public goods for the digital transformation of agriculture and food system. And what your presentation shows is that sharing knowledge and creating partnerships are essential if we want to increase the pace of digital transformation. But we need an infrastructure to do this. And this infrastructure is this global public good, and it turns out that this is what you're creating, a sort of intangible infrastructure that your network is to help coordination with all the stakeholders. And so we've heard from our discussions that there are quite a few projects ongoing in Africa already from the World Bank side, but also TechnoServe. And I'm sure, George, you have a lot of things to say according to what the discussants have already brought up and you've seen in the chat. But to wrap up a little bit and allow you to address some of these different questions, one question was, what are the key elements that you would attribute the success to in Europe that other emerging markets, Africa specifically, may lack at the moment? And I will add to this and broaden the question to others so that you think about it. What would we need to tackle first for narrowing this valley of death, and as well to localize these technologies? And in this, thinking about all this with, well, what could be the role of the World Bank? So George, maybe I would first ask you to maybe answer this question about the key elements, and please, if you can be short so that we can go to other discussions. Thank you very much.
Thanks for this intriguing and difficult question, Marie-Agnes. The key element is that why did we start with SmartAgriHubs? That was that we noticed that there are thousands of, let's say, mini projects. I call them mini projects, not two, but based on one technology. And then a lot of these projects are not making it to the farmers. And we wondered why, and in IOF we discovered that it's not just an app that we need, but we need systems. Farmers need systems, not an app that can measure the humidity of the soil. No, it needs to be included in a complete system. And for making a system, you need this wide ecosystem. You need to be involved with other stakeholders in the network. So that's what we started to organize, to bring people together, not only startups, but also the big companies and let's say the people in the management information systems, the technical, to build systems instead of apps. So our paradigm is not, we don't need more apps, we need systems. And for that, you need to have more complex organizations to make it work. And that's how we ended up with this concept of digital innovation hubs. I think that's the key challenge that we that initiated our thinking on digital innovation hubs.
Thank you. Could I maybe give the floor to James, as James was the one being a little bit wondering about what we could really do and how to really localize and use these technologies to localize them. James, if you could maybe tell us a little bit about what you think would be the challenges to localize and maybe use more of the local technologies, because you, in different discussions, were mentioning there's a lot of incubators already present in Africa. What is really preventing to go towards the next step, according to you? We've heard about finance, we've heard about access to data, we've heard about sometimes maybe the role of policymakers. Do you have any other insights for us on that?
Mr. Chair, I'll be very happy agreement come to realization in the ground is so helping them connect to exist through government initiatives, any way you can help people, and then test, because none of the solutions that we've been developing in tech, they often just need general business mentoring, and I think that's something that was mentioned as part of the networks, and it's hugely valuable. The World Bank has done research on the importance of mentoring and coaching for entrepreneurs in their success and growth, and I think that's incredibly important as well. Often because there's just not enough examples. There are, if you're in maybe Nigeria or Kenya, you can look at a lot of examples of successful startups, but if you're sitting in Benin or Togo or Burkina Faso or any number of other countries, then you don't have a lot of examples to take from, and you might not necessarily know what you need to build. I read a great story about a Ugandan entrepreneur doing a bus reservation app, and he said that they wasted so much money doing the wrong kinds of advertising. And it turns out that they just needed to go down to bus stations and do face-to-face because YouTube ads were just not getting them any conversions. So anyway, I think there's a lot of general coaching that could be valuable there.
Thank you very much, James. I think that's interesting. You're moving the issue towards not really the tech issue, but actually just the business case that can be done. And it seems to me that maybe people from the World Bank team might have a little bit more to say on this and how it's been done in Kenya and how they've been reaching out and helping with the business cases. So maybe Vinay, if you would like to jump in to say a bit more about this.
Thanks, Maria Agnes. Yeah, I think that's an important part of the whole thing. And so before we actually facilitated this partnership between these, really startups and the county governments, we took the startups through almost 3 to 4 rounds of, really, I would say, mentoring and coaching, where we looked at their business plans and we kind of gave them feedback and also kind of helped them really kind of fine tune them to be able to partner with the county governments. We also partnered with Mercy Corps, which really has this kind of an expertise in terms of incubation and acceleration. And we will continue to work with Mercy Corps as we go forward. And this is something which is really a very, very critical area. And we've seen at least 3 to 4 active startups. When they came to us, they were really new. They were like 2,000 to 3,000 farmer companies, and now we've seen them flowered. Actually, they've kind of not just through our kind of support, but they've been able to access more equity and also even debt. So I think this kind of support towards their overall kind of business plan and incubation is very, very critical.
Thank you very much, Vinay. So going back a little bit to the role of the SmartAgriHubs for this, I would like to hear maybe a bit more from either Augustus or George, how they've actually maybe dealt with the issue of business, both the issue of business capacity and access to knowledge about how to do a business plan for young innovators, but also, and getting broader here, this issue of having enough market, having enough demand, in the end, and we have a bit of a tension here with James saying that there's not much of a regional market, but I do know that we have online some people from Cardesa in the SADC region who already have a network of technical assistants and of these research institutions collaborating in the SADC region. So there is a bit of a regional dimension that could allow to reach scale. So I would like to hear more about how important this scale issue was for the SmartAgriHubs on one side, and maybe George can first answer about that. Maybe also Augustus on this business case issue and the regional and the scale issue. Maybe first George, if you don't mind, and then Augustus, if you can take the floor. George, I think you're still muted.
For the business issue, we have built up a lot of experience in the previous project, the iOS 2020 project, because that's where we had to bring solutions really to the market. And the business model approach is it's a tricky one, because usually innovation starts with the technology gigs, I would say, and then you have to bring in some thoughts about the how to make it into a business. We did it step by step. So first you ask the technology guys how to think about the KPIs. So what is the value of the solution that you are working on? The next step is that you ask them and discuss with them on the value proposition. And then you have to come up with a business model. First, a business model for the solution, but a lot of solutions require participation of a broad partnership. So you also have to make viable business models for the partners in the solution. So the internet providers and the data providers and several others. So what we did is we supported our use cases with that, and we formalized the support into tools that can be used by the digital innovation hubs to support their innovation experiments. That's an important thing I want to address, since business approach is also important. What we saw, as soon as you start about business, you see also the innovation, the target solution is changing, or the concept of the solution is changing. What we saw, and I think Augustus can tell more about it, sometimes you think about, if you look at the smallholders, it was mentioned quite some time, they cannot invest in such a technology. But what we saw is if this requires a serious investment, we see that a new service provider pops up. The service provider is doing the investment, and he provides a service on, let's say, fertilization, or on pest management, or on irrigation. He provides it as a service to the small farmers, and they pay per hectare or per plant or whatever. So that's what you see, how the smallholders, there are also business models for digitization in smallholders. I'm sure Augustus can give examples on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me spice up the discussion a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, to kick off, I would like to claim that farmers does not need the technologies or innovations as such. It's the same as we don't care what kind of wireless or a Bluetooth chip is in our phone. We don't need to know that. We use the phone because we do some kind of actuations, like calling, chatting, emailing, and etc. So in most of the cases, I face that the problem is that the market, the stakeholders are talking that farmers needs to digitalize, and they say, okay, but why? So we are going back to the same challenge of communication, is that we need not to forget about financial sustainability for the farmers. And then again, even back in Europe, the farmers understand that when they are buying the class or fend harvester or a tractor for 300,000 euro, they already know what kind of value it will bring. But when we are thinking that they will invest significant amount of money for the new technologies when they haven't tested them, it's false. It will not happen. So as George was telling, that the new models has to come up. Most probably it will not come up to the mass adoption before service and hardware as a service will be in the market available. So maybe here the intervention of the World Bank can come up by setting up the playground and setting up the new rules of business modeling, so that it wouldn't be so frightful for the farmers to adopt something new. And the communication has to be always tackled that we are not just want to digitalize the agriculture. We are bringing the tools which will help you to work in easily, or to make more money, so to reduce the costs or increase the profitability. But anyway, even the small farmers are the businessmen. So we need to talk, in the language of numbers, and to help them to start using, because we need to come up to the snowball effect. And the snowball is easing entry point to start to use the technologies, because we know that they help, but they don't. And by claiming and forcing them to think and to invest money, it will fail. This is what we are trying to do back here in the Baltic states and in the North Europe. So we are creating right now the models how farmers don't need to invest into the capex, but the governments will subsidize the technology providers, the DIHs, Digital Innovation Hubs itself, so they would be able to give the services per a cattle, per a hectare, per a liter of milk, whatever he is doing. And that kind of way it will be stressless going further. So business-wise, this is my opinion, I would say.
Thank you very much, Augustus. I think where you're driving us also is towards whether the government has a digital agriculture strategy in mind in the governments where we're working. And this is also something we would like to develop with them, and with the ideas through rather digital innovation systems where digital innovation hubs can have a place. And I think you're broadening the question of to policies and the role of governments in general. And maybe we can hear maybe a little bit more from Leslie now, because she's been interacting a lot with the government in Indonesia, and to say a few words about the incentive of the government of Indonesia and in creating these innovation challenges and these strategies in Indonesia. Over to you, Leslie.
Very briefly, for Indonesia, what they're trying to do is to capitalize on the innovation system in the fintech space. Some of you may know the fintech is a thriving ecosystem currently in Indonesia, and there are a few unicorns that's coming out of Indonesia, such as Gojek for the ride-sharing platform that's going into so many different areas, including the food business. And so from Indonesia point of view, the Ministry of Agriculture has a few key action areas: increase production and productivity and supply of staple food. The other thing is around stimulate the diversification of food consumption and production. Next is around food reserves at the national level, provincial and village level, and then modernizing agriculture and leveraging digital technology and artificial intelligence. That's where I was highlighting some of the areas that we are experimenting to really bring about the new way of thinking on how we connect these dots together, like the agri-tech with the traditional smallholder farmers, and also with the Ministry of Agriculture, and then promoting more in terms of higher productivity and better yield for aimed for export of agriculture in future. So I think those are the things that we are harnessing the learnings from Kenya that our colleagues have so eloquently shared, and bringing that and contextualizing that for Indonesia, which is a very large economy in the ASEAN region, and then bring that kind of scale and, of course, catalyzing the innovation ecosystem, and perhaps creating the kind of multi-stakeholder partnership that is discussed today in the conversation. I think that will really help enrich the platform, and in future, perhaps we can share some of the learnings from the experiments that we are putting together with Ministry of Agriculture and other strategic partners to take this forward and share that at a greater scale in future. Thank you so much, Maria-Agnes.
Thanks, Leslie. Now, just to finish, because we're completely over time already, I would like to bring back Uliana and the IFC into the loop, because I would like to understand a bit better and maybe explore a bit better how potentially the IFC could benefit from a model like the SmartAgriHub, and not wanting to broaden too much, but the SmartAgriHubs has a lot of competency centers and a lot of private sector entities included. Do you think, Uliana, that there would be ways for the IFC to directly coordinate with the SmartAgriHubs and benefit from the stakeholders they have in their network, whether it is directly the innovators, but maybe also thinking about the different tech competency centers around? So over to you.
Absolutely, Maria-Agnes. And again, just wanted to echo what George and Alexis were saying, because that farmers don't need an app, farmers don't need a drone or other piece of technology. So what farmers needed is a solution. And they need to understand that, one is higher yields and another is ability to sell that product, right? That doesn't make sense for a farmer to improve productivity as 50% of tomatoes they grow is wasted. So what we really need to look at is the holistic solution delivered to farmers. That's why a lot of what we are focusing now in tech in upstream is how to support those efficient delivery models. So where tech is bundled, again, it needs to be a holistic solution. Tech needs to come together with quality inputs and with extension services and with access to markets, and so one is how to integrate, how to select an appropriate tech to be delivered to smallholder farmers in emerging markets. Linking these innovators with, again, our networks that we work with through advisory services and through investments in commodity traders, in large operations, in aggregators. And then another support this testing phase where the technology is proven to be viable, but it does require adaptation. It does require wider testing to prove and to bring it to adoption.
Thank you very much. Parmesh, I think it's time for you to close. Unfortunately, it's been a long conversation, but thanks to all. Over to you, Parmesh.
Thanks a lot, Mary Agnes, for facilitating this discussion. I wish we had more time, but I think we will lose people. I think we're already at a mortality rate of around 20%, which is pretty good actually. If you extend by 10 minutes, my hypothesis is you lose 40% people, but we are doing better. So I would like to thank all the presenters, George, Augustus, and all the discussants, who have really enriched this discussion. You can see that the quality of discussion you have, enabled on the chat shows how much interest people have on this topic. There's an active discussion going on there. I would just like to say that we would like to consider that investment in an innovation hub, the kinds of things we've discussed today, is a good global public good investment, which we would like to make a part of our investments going forward, because it enables to create a more enabling environment. But we have to work on policy and lots of other things also upstream, and then also work with IFC to see how we can then bundle World Bank's work, the advisory services work, and the investments together to create a more steady pipeline of investments which come out of these innovation hubs. So I think we look at this option seriously, and we will engage with your team, and we will also bring a lot of innovation hubs we are working with in Africa and link up with you guys so that we can have another conversation between the innovation hubs, the innovators, accelerators, and the Europeans at some stage. We'll facilitate this conversation down the line after a little bit of more preparation, and then see if we can think through in the new investments we're going to make now in Africa. How do we make this kind of an investment integral to how we invest? And I think the Kenya, is clearly on that track, and we will listen next week on how they have created an innovation hub already and how we can work with that. But I think we are seeing the same thing happening in Ethiopia as IFC is investing more there. Nigeria, we are seeing the same thing in Cameroon. Senegal clearly is one of the other countries which has worked on it. And I think clearly in West Africa also we see a lot of options there. So thanks a lot for everyone, and thanks the audience also for staying till now and asking such rich set of questions. And again, we would follow this up with the select group of people who have shown interest. There's a lot of networking happening on the chat already, which is also one of the purposes of this webinar. And thank you everyone, and have a good rest of the day wherever you are, or rest of the night wherever you are. And please stay tuned to the next, the time for the next Thursday is 8 a.m. EST. And so you will get an announcement today late. To all of you who have attended this, you will get an announcement. All the presentations are available, will be available at the link which you have got with the invitation. And you will also get a recording of today's session.